I was in Paris for a week in the off-season. I went alone because I unfortunately do not have a lot of friends around me, and I am estranged from my family. I don't travel to find myself or any of that bullshit. I just needed to be somewhere that wasn't my apartment or the office or the inside of my head. I'd done the Louvre, walked the bridges, tried to care about the architecture. The city felt like it was performing. The people in it did too. I suppose I'm guilty of that too sometimes, so I can't blame them, but I was tired of tourists, so I started looking for things that the locals would avoid. That is how I ended up at the Catacombs. Everyone knows about them obviously, with all the skulls and bones and corridors underground. But what most people don't realize is that the part that they let you see is tiny, less than 1% of them. The rest is sealed off or unreachable, supposedly anyway. I heard about the unofficial route from a bartender near my hostel. He said it without really saying it. He just called it a shortcut, if I was willing to pay a little and not ask any questions. He gave me an address and told me to go at 2 p.m. sharp, said someone would be waiting. The address was a tiny electronics repair place south of Montparnasse. It didn't even have a sign. I went in and asked for battery restoration like I was told to do. Seemed like a lot of effort for something like this. I know it's kind of illegal, but the police aren't exactly going to risk their lives to arrest a dumbass who wanted to explore. The guy behind the counter was thin and twitchy, maybe in his 60s. He just nodded at me, walked into the back, and came out with a printed receipt. It had a QR code and a string of numbers. That was it. I scanned it at the side entrance of the catacombs, near a service road. The gate buzzed open. There was no line, no guide, no warning signs. There was just a grey concrete stairwell and a strip of flickering lights. I started going down. At first it felt normal. A bit quiet and musty with endless spiraling stairs, but overall, not too bad. I had been in worse places. Then it flattened into a corridor, which was completely unlit aside from a bare bulb every 20 feet. Did not see anything crazy like skulls lining the walls and floors, and I did not spot any tourists either, just concrete and pipes. I walked, I don't know how far. I had no cell service and there was no signage or audio guide to guide me. I mean, duh. They were not going to advertise an illegal back entrance that they're making money off of. It was literally just me and the sound of my boots. Eventually, I saw a door on the right. It was some kind of metal door and it was slightly ajar. There were no markings on the door. Inside the door was a hallway which was much wider and cleaner than the one that I was in. The walls were tiled, almost sterile. I stepped through without thinking, like it was the natural path. It took me a minute to realize what was off. The temperature dropped sharply and the sound changed, like the air was being absorbed instead of echoing. And there was something faint, like humming or a ventilation system running way too strong. Then the hallway narrowed again. I turned a corner and saw the first person. He was sitting against the wall, wearing a dark polo shirt with an ID badge on a lanyard. His eyes were open but empty, like he was looking at me but not really seeing me. I asked if he was okay, but he did not respond. He just kept breathing, but it was shallow and slow. There was something off about his hands. One of them was red, the skin swollen and split. It wasn't bleeding, just raw, like it had been boiled. I backed up. My instinct was to call someone, but obviously I had no signal. I turned to retrace my steps, but the hallway behind me was gone, literally gone. The corner I'd turned, it was just a wall now, tiled and seamless, like it had always been that way. I thought I was losing it. I even reached out and touched the tile, cold and solid. I must have been mistaken or forgotten where the door was. It must have been somewhere else nearby, and the identical nature of the place tricked my brain. The man had not moved an inch. I looked at him again. His eyes were not tracking me. He was just waiting for something or nothing. His ID had no name, just a logo. I didn't recognize it. It was not French or anything corporate. Didn't look like it, at least. I decided that my only option was to keep on walking. More people appeared. They were spaced out every 50 feet or so. They were all seated and all breathing, but none of them acknowledged me at all. One was a woman, maybe in her 30s. She was wearing office clothes, with shoes missing, and her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her cheeks were wet like she had been crying, but she did not move. I kept on walking. I started counting the rooms I passed. Some were open, some had lights on. One had a cot, one had buckets, one had a mirror covering the entire wall. I did not stop to look at myself. Something told me not to. Eventually I found a staircase. It was narrow and made out of concrete. It was descending even deeper. I wanted to turn back, but there was nowhere to turn to. I was way too far in now, and had already gotten lost in such a short amount of time, so making it all the way back would be impossible without messing up again. I went down. There were no lights in this part. There were just red safety straps glowing faintly along the floor. The smell in the air changed and became more sharp and chemical, like a hospital corridor that had not been used in years. The doors here were heavier. They were bolted and numbered. Some had small windows with wire mesh. I looked through one. There was a man inside. He was naked and sitting on the floor, hands wrapped around his knees. He was not facing me, but I could see his spine. There were holes, perfect circles, like someone had cored into his back with a drill. They were not bleeding. They were just empty. I looked into the next room. The room was empty, but there were straps on the floor. There was no bed nor furniture, just a grate in the center with something dried around it. I stopped looking into the rooms after that. I started to panic, but quietly. I felt like if I let anyone know that I was panicking, something bad might happen. I had to just pretend that I belonged and that nothing was going on. I focused on my breathing and tried not to make noise. But the further I went, the more I realized I had not heard anything in minutes, not even my own footsteps. It was like the floor was absorbing every impact. Even my breathing felt muffled. I stopped and held still, trying to make out if anyone was ahead. Nothing. Just the low hum of something mechanical, deep and far away, like the building had lungs. The next door was different. It was still metal, but this one was unlatched. A clipboard hung next to it, zip-tied to a hook. The paper was in French, but I recognized a few things that I could translate to English that I had learned in my studies. I'm not fluent in French, but I know a little. I recognize things like evaluation, compliance failure, and reassignment. I pushed the door open. Inside was lit up by fluorescent lights. It was a concrete room with a long table bolted to the floor and stainless steel restraints at each corner. Everything reeked of bleach. A yellow bucket sat under a drain, still half full of something dark red. There were no flies or even a smell of blood. Everything had been sterilized too well. In the corner was a metal cabinet. Inside of it was gloves, a few hard drives, what looked like biometric scanners, and a stack of forms labeled in both French and English. Unregistered sample intake. There were sections for the name, approximate age, physical condition, whether sedation was used, whether the subject was able to communicate. Half of the forms were filled out. Most entries just said, not applicable or uncooperative. This wasn't a tourist path. This was medical. Why the fuck had they sent me through here? Did they know about this? Did those assholes set me up for something? I kept going. If they were doing some fucked up shit, then I was going to find concrete proof and then take it back. The hallway shifted from concrete to tile again. It was beige, with grouting so clean, it looked brand new. I turned left and hit a T-junction. A sign read, Zone R, personnel only. I took a right. That is when I heard something. Footsteps, close, fast. I ducked into an open doorway. It turned out to be an observation room. It had a two-way mirror on one wall, a single metal chair in front of it, and a desk with a thin LCD monitor still powered on. All that was on display was a login screen with a blinking cursor. I did not touch it. Through the mirror, the other side looked like a hospital room. There was a gurney, restraints, and a bucket under the bed, just like the other room. But this one was cleaner, actively in use it looked like. Someone walked past the hallway outside. Their keys were jingling inside their pockets. I waited until the sound faded, and then stepped back outside. I turned the corner and froze. The next hallway was not tile or concrete. It was carpeted. beige, like a cheap hotel with a low ceiling and numbered wooden doors, each with a peephole. One was open. Inside of it was a small room, a bed, a desk, and a mounted camera in the corner. On the wall, someone had scratched lines into the paint, hundreds of them. I looked closer, and every seventh line was marked with a small pencil stroke across it, some kind of a tally system, I guess. Whoever stayed there had counted something. Maybe the days, maybe worse. There was something on the bed. It was a notebook, spiral bound, and it had some pages torn out. What was left was in English, with really sloppy handwriting. The ink was a little blurred from either sweat or water. It was like some kind of a patient file, I guess. Third intake this week, younger than the rest, sedated, still fought. Keep forgetting I'm supposed to catalog resistance level. Dr. B said that is not a concern anymore. Just the scan, the dental record, the tissue. Another entry. Got a warning for asking what happens to the ones that do not clear. That is not our department. They always said that. There is never a department. I kept flipping. Subject 118 had tags under the skin. RFID maybe. We are not supposed to ask where they are coming from, but it was not local. Spoke English, some Russian. Young. Kept saying she had rights. Kept asking for a lawyer. Last page. Scan said 96% viability. They took her. I watched the guy pack her teeth into the jar after she bit him. This place is rotting. Even the silence here is violent. I took the notebook. I thought that it should have been enough to at least start an investigation. At the end of the hall, I found the door marked Logistics. Inside were racks of folders, every one labeled with dates and codes. I opened one up. Inside was a photograph of a teenage boy with his face bruised and his eyes swollen shut. Next to it was a checklist. Sample A, viable. Sample B, compromised. Then a name. It was some European last name that did not look like his, with a signature under assigned custody. Next to that, disposal approved, burn order. I checked the cabinet below the files. Bins, plastic trays labeled with numbers and dates. Hair, teeth, tags, even shoelaces, none of it labeled with names. It was evidence, but I couldn't exactly just stuff this shit into my pocket. It was way too gross for that. I don't remember walking anymore, just finding myself deeper, turning corners, unable to leave. The facility expanded in all directions. Some hallways were sterile, and some were unfinished. One was flooded with standing water, rippling from slow drips above. Another was filled with shelves of pharmaceuticals, all without labels. In the cold storage room, I found the first thing that made me stop and feel sick in my bones. A wall of glass door freezers, like in a grocery store. Inside of it was vacuum-sealed bags that were labeled with Sharpie. There were initials and numbers on it. Some were pink and pale, some were almost black. The far wall had larger doors. I opened one up. It was empty, except for a plastic container with something human-sized, covered in frost, limbs drawn in, like it had frozen mid-scream. No tags, no ID, just a date. 4 weeks before I arrived in Paris. I tried desperately to get out for a while. I honestly don't know how I even managed it. I was lucky, that is all I can say. The way back was out of the question. I had no idea where to even go, and it seemed like the hallway shifted, even though I knew that my dumbass brain had just gotten confused. I walked for what felt like an hour, and eventually found stairs. I took them, and ended up somewhere near the surface again. The air changed. I smelled oil, and rainwater, and car exhaust. Then I saw the exit sign. Some kind of emergency metal door with a push bar. I hit it. It opened up into a service alley, a few blocks away from the Donfort Rochereau station. I stumbled out, and walked until I found people. I saw tourists, a couple holding hands, life happening. I sat on a bench and cried for the first time in maybe a decade. Since then, I've tried to report it. I sent emails to French authorities, the US Embassy, even some journalists. Nobody replies, or if they do, it is boilerplate. We've received your message, and it has been forwarded to the appropriate department. I went to the cops and gave them the notebook, and begged them to start an investigation, and they assured me that they would. I didn't buy it though. They seemed to give me weird looks, Like they thought I had written this diary out myself as some kind of sick prank. I didn't even have any fucking photos to show them because my phone died while I was down there. I was down there for so long and using it as a flashlight. When I asked if they would keep me updated on the case, they told me that they couldn't until it was complete. The guys who sent me down that passage, I could not find them again, could not contact them. It was like they up and vanished. I left by train the next day. I didn't feel safe staying in the city any longer. Part of me feels like I was let go, but I don't know why they would do that. Why let me get away if you're trying to keep it a secret? If I was set up to be taken or used or whatever the fuck they were doing there, why not go through with it? I have so many more questions than answers. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. So, having pissed off somebody again, I was on graveyard shift in the Brigade TOC, Tactical Operations Center, when the radio rig crackled to life at about 2:30 a.m. Support base, this is Warrior 6 Actual, over. You could hear that the A was capitalized. Warrior 6, this is support base, over. This is Warrior 6 Actual. We are inbound with rotary and need hot refuel, over. Capitalized and emphasized this time. Roger, Warrior 6 Actual. How many aircraft in ETA, over. This is Warrior 6 Actual. Free aircraft in 5 minutes, over. I picked up the other handset and called aircraft operations and let them know that a VIP was inbound 5 minutes with free aircraft for a hot refuel. Got a roger. Warrior 6 Actual, this is support base. Refuel is notified and will be standing by, over. This is Warrior 6 Actual. They better be, or I will have your ass. Cool. First time I was ever threatened by a 2-star over the radio for what somebody else has to do. Roger, Warrior 6. Fuel is standing by. I couldn't resist pissing him off. This is Warrior 6 Actual. Out. Oh yeah, he noticed. He was pissed. Okay. Rest of the night was quiet. I filled out the radio log, finished my shift, and went to bed at the end of my shift. I woke up around 1300 and wandered down to the shitter. Couldn't help but notice an air of excitement, so I asked what was going on. Didn't you hear? They caught Saddam. Wow. Does this mean the war is over? Nope. I did not put 2 and 2 together until about 3 weeks later, when I had to truck over to 4th ID headquarters and got a coin from Major General Odierno for contributing to the success of the capture of Saddam Hussein, along with a host of support people. It was kinda nice. So anyway, that is my story of how I helped capture Saddam, technically speaking, in a tiny, small way. It happened last summer when my 2 friends and I visited an abandoned building deep in the mountains, a place rumored to be haunted. We arrived a little past midnight. It was raining, which made everything feel damp and suffocating. It was very eerie. The abandoned house was not especially large or imposing, and at first glance, nothing particularly strange happened. Honestly, it felt a bit anticlimactic given all the creepy rumors that we had heard about the place, which I will get onto in a moment. But there was one thing that bothered me during our exploration. My friend, who stood immediately to my right, kept chewing gum with a loud, incessant smacking noise. It was incredibly irritating and distracting. It is one of my pet peeves, and on top of that, I noticed that his breathing seemed unusually heavy, almost labored. I was thinking, how the hell can you be out of breath from just walking around? After finishing our somewhat disappointing exploration, I turned to my friend as we were preparing to leave. With a half-joking tone, I said, "Hey, your table manners have always been pretty bad. You know, like earlier, when you were smacking your gum, man, it was driving me crazy." My friend looked at me completely bewildered and said quietly, "I wasn't chewing any gum." At that moment, a loud, unsettling chewing sound echoed from the abandoned building behind us. It was unmistakably the same disgusting rhythmic smacking that I had been hearing. We instantly bolted back to our car, panic surging through us, and we sped away from that place as fast as possible. According to local legend though, no one knows how true it really is. The house has been the scene of a horrific tragedy. It was said that the father had gone mad, murdering his entire family and living with their smoked flesh stored in the house for nearly a year. Reflecting on it now, I can't help but wonder about those awful chewing sounds. Could it have been a ghostly echo of the insane father eternally reliving his gruesome meals, or perhaps the restless spirits of the victims, trapped, forever haunting that decaying ruin with their tormented presence? Whatever it was, the thought alone makes my skin crawl, and I never want to find myself again near that cursed building. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, my family left our apartment in the city and moved to the village, waiting for better times. I was about 2 years old back then. We lived poorly. My parents took whatever work they could find. Near the village, some local rich guy was building 3 huge cottages. People made money off the project however they could. Some worked for him. Others stole building materials at night. The cottages were near a forest and a ravine. Not exactly a beautiful place, but out of the way at least. One frosty winter night, our neighbor got drunk and went wandering near the construction site. He fell into the ravine next to it. The next day, everyone went looking for him. They found him frozen in the snow. The neighbors could not afford a coffin or funeral, so they cremated him and kept the urn somewhere at their house. Then, suddenly, the construction stopped. The cranes were taken away, but everything else stayed. People figured it was just a pause. A month passed. Nothing changed. Then the looting began. Almost overnight, people from the village started stripping the place clean. It is a small village. Everyone knew what was happening, but no one talked about it. They took everything. One night, my mother and my father went too, to grab some materials. Some of the stuff that they took is still lying around at our dacha. My dad had been drinking a little. While trying to pull a block loose from the ice, he started swearing loudly. It was dead quiet, pitch dark, and he only had a flashlight with him. Suddenly, he heard footsteps, slow, steady crunching in the snow. He stopped and listened. The steps stopped too. Probably one of ours, he muttered, and went back to yanking at the block. A few seconds later, more swearing, and the crunch of footsteps again. This time, they did not stop. Someone was definitely approaching. You could hear the snow being crushed under each step. My mom had already put together a decent pile of bricks in her pans, but my dad was bolder. Still grumbling, he grabbed the flashlight and aimed it toward the sound. There was no one there, just a trail of fresh footprints in the snow, walking straight toward him, like someone invisible was making their way right to him. They did not wait around, dropped everything and ran as fast as they could. They had never seen anything like it. The footprints were just 10 meters away by then. When he told me the story, it still scared the hell out of me. The place was nearby, and I spent a lot of time around there. Later, we found out that the guy who'd started building those houses had done it on land that was not even his. He got arrested and sent off to do time. And if anyone's curious, I could still show you that spot on Google Maps. I work as a corrections officer in a state prison and have been here for about 5 years. My nights mostly involve routine patrols, checking cells, making sure everything is in order. I switched to nights a few months ago, when administration said they needed experienced officers, and I didn't mind the change. One thing that stood out right away were the stories circulating among inmates, usually gossip and threats, but also something different, something that did not feel quite like just talk. It sounded ridiculous at first, but the inmates really seemed to believe it. There was a legend about something lurking in the old wing. The section closed years ago due to structural issues. They called it the Crawler. I dismissed it as typical prison folklore. Prisoners make up stories to pass time, convincing themselves so that they don't get bored, and to scare the newer guys. One night, during rounds, an inmate named Marcus stopped me. Usually quiet and kept to himself, he asked, eyes darting nervously, "Officer, can I talk to you?" I told him to go ahead. "Have you seen it yet?" he asked. Seen what?" I replied. "The thing crawling around at night. Some guys say they hear scratching in the walls." I sighed. "That's just rats or pipes making noise." He shook his head hard. No, it's not rats. It's something else. Just be careful on your rounds, okay? I nodded and kept moving. Later that week, I overheard 2 inmates whispering. Tommy saw it last night. No way. What did he say? It was in the shadows near cell block D. Moved like nothing you'd ever seen. Cell block D was near the old wing. I tried to brush it off, but the stories kept on growing. A few nights later, I was in the control room with Officer Carla, watching the cameras. She pointed at a screen. Did you see that? No, what? Something moving near the old wing entrance. I looked, but it was just a dim corridor with minimal lighting. Probably a glitch or maybe an inmate sneaking around. The cameras had been glitchy lately, so I told her to have maintenance check them. That night on patrol near the old wing, I noticed a door that should have been locked that was slightly ajar. I approached cautiously, flashlight cutting through the dark. Hello in there? I called. No response. The old wing was off limits, but if someone got in there, it was dangerous for everyone. The air smelled old, damp concrete and rusted metal. The cells were empty, bars coated with rust. I heard a faint scratching ahead. I moved to a closed cell door with a large hole in the back wall, about the size of a manhole. Probably years of erosion or an abandoned maintenance project. Shining my light into the hole, I saw nothing but darkness beyond the beam. Then movement. Something shifted just out of sight. Hey, who's down there? I demanded. No reply. A sudden rush of cold air blew past me, and for a split second, I thought I saw something pale and contorted, moving on all fours, dart across the cell and vanish into the hole. My heart hammered. I stepped back, unsure of what I had seen. Deciding it was time to leave, I turned to exit, but the scratching came again, louder this time. I speed walked away. Back in the control room, Carla asked if I'd been in the old wing. I said I thought I saw something. She frowned and warned me, be careful. That place gives me the creeps. Over the next few nights, the tension in the prison thickened. More inmates whispered about the crawler. Some refused to sleep, others begged to be moved. One older inmate, Lewis, pulled me aside urgently. Officer, you've got to do something. It's getting bolder. Last night, it was in the ventilation shaft near my cell. I could hear it breathing. Have you seen it? I asked. He nodded quickly. Years ago, before they closed the wing, one of the inmates got attacked there. I tried to reason with him. There's no record of any missing inmates. Maybe you're letting the stories get to you. He gripped the bars tightly. If you don't act, something bad is going to happen. I decided to check the old wing again, making sure all the doors were secured. Approaching the same cell with the hole, I found the door wide open. My flashlight flickered as I stepped inside. The hole in the wall looked bigger than before. A low rumble echoed from within. Was it an animal growl? It did not sound familiar. Who's in there? I called, but silence answered. I thought about calling backup, but did not want to seem paranoid over nothing. Gathering my courage, I moved closer to the hole. The air was cold and damp. Suddenly, a pale hand, or something like a hand, shot out from the darkness. I stumbled backward, falling onto the cell floor. Something pale and quick emerged just halfway from the hall, gaunt, with hollow eyes, and a mouth way too wide to be human. It hissed, fixing its gaze on me before pulling itself back in and disappearing. My adrenaline surged as I scrambled up and bolted down the corridor. Back in the control room, I found Carla again. We need to report this, I said, breathless. Report what? She asked. There's something in the old wing. I don't know what, but it's dangerous. She studied me carefully. Are you sure it wasn't just a shadow or some escaped inmate? I am telling you, it was real. We need the warden involved. Eventually, she agreed. We contacted the warden, who arrived within the hour. After I explained, he looked skeptical and annoyed. Did you call me down for an animal? Can't handle a raccoon. Maybe a homeless person snuck in. No, I said firmly. This was not a person or any animal I've ever seen, he sighed. Fine. We will have maintenance seal that hole and set traps. You get some rest. Don't call me here again for nothing. He clearly did not believe me. If he thought I was lying, I could have been reprimanded. After that night, I avoided the old wing altogether. Maintenance sealed off that hole and locked down the whole section. Only the warden and maintenance could enter. The whispers of the crawler eventually died down. I couldn't have been happier. It was a story I did not want to believe, and the more real it felt, the more scared I became of my own job. I don't know what it was or where it came from, but since then, I've wondered if that prison was built over something that should have been left alone. I still work here, but I keep my head down. Weirdest stranger encounter was a little past midnight in Denver, Colorado. Was completely lost while on a bike and my phone was dead. Finally get to gas station that lets me charge long enough to call roommate to come pick me up. Waiting on curb outside gas station, just writing in thoughts notebook. Strange guy, probably mid-20s, sits on curb next to me. Did not notice him until he started to sit down. Clean looking, but most likely homeless. Looks over at me and calmly asks, "Are you dead?" Confused, I say, "What?" He replies, "I don't know how else to ask, but are you dead?" I think maybe it's street talk for carrying drugs or something, and tell him that if it's a code for anything, I don't know. He says no, and tells me there are a lot of dead people walking around Denver. Tells me they put off a distinct, sweet smell. Intrigued, I ask him how he would know if we're dead. He changes the subject, asking if I can give him a ride to Colfax. Weird, because he can clearly see I'm just there with a bike. Did he know I had a ride coming? I give him a ride, mostly because I want to talk some more. He talks really calm and quiet like. During the ride, he goes on to tell me about how he used to work for a funeral home / morgue driving the dead. Tells me that Denver is demonic. Says most large cities are demonic. We drop him off. To this day, was my strangest experience with a stranger. I skipped over a lot and can't greentext, so sorry. It was most likely a druggie, but the way he talked did not seem like it.